Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story in which some entitled Karen manages to turn a simple task into a full-blown petty adventure. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Tell me to go home and shave? No problem. Back in 2010, I moved out of my folks' place to a neighboring town and got my first real job working for the Hamburger Emperor. About halfway through my 11-month stay, working in only the kitchen, we had a semi-surprise manager, aka Big Boss, visit. It was about an hour drive, so we were informed they were on the way. This was a very small town, and on most days I would ask my roommate to drop me off, or I would simply walk the 30 minutes it took to get from one end of town to the other. Little foreshadowing happened. On the day of note, I'd been dropped off for my shift around noon, as I was usually scheduled for lunch rushes. After working for about 2 hours, the news came in and suddenly nothing's clean or good enough. Now, I've heard fast food health inspection horror stories, and I have none of my own. We kept a clean ship. Lower management, hereby Little Boss, was just looking for anything and everything, and in their triggered state wasn't afraid to split hairs, and in my case, hair was their primary focus. See, my adolescent hormones had the audacity of finally mustering up enough facial hair at 19 that one could reasonably call it a 5 o'clock shadow without being completely laughed out of the room. Knowing full well my ride situation, but obviously not thinking about it, Little Boss requested that I go home to shave and come back. I said, yes, sir, and off I went on foot. After walking home for about 15 minutes, I texted my roommate, who promptly picked me up. I shaved, we got lunch, then we drove around another 40 minutes of me on the clock while we did dumb college kid stuff. After about 90 minutes to 2 hours, my roommate dropped me a block away and I walked back in. Little Boss was pissed, flying around trying to make everything look seamless while being scrutinized by Big Boss. None of my peers noticed much. They're all keeping their nose down as to not be singled out and get made an example of for Little Boss to save face and look good. You know how these things go. With all eyes on us, Little Boss just started laying into me. I wasn't 100% confident here or even remotely cocky. I just calmly stated it's a 30-minute walk both ways and I was prioritizing having to shave. Big Boss asks Little Boss what's up, inquiring towards the situation at hand. Before turning away, Little Boss mumbled something to me about how I need to be more upfront about things and can't just take off for 2 hours without telling anyone. LOL. They both went into the tiny office, and I never heard about it again. With the high turnover rate these places have a reputation for, there were only a couple of people left who even remembered Big Boss is the one who got me the job. He's fully aware of your ride situation, but lied that you weren't upfront about it. What a jerk. And our second story. Karen tells me I'm enabling a homeless man. So we have our fair share of homeless people in my town, the usual ones at the end of exit ramps with signs or at the lights of highways. Usually I don't give anything, because realistically, usually don't have anything to give. But yesterday, I'd had a decent day and actually found myself with a couple of bucks on hand. I see one particular man at a freeway light often, and I know some of his story. He does use any money collected to purchase food, drink, not alcohol that I've seen, and will accept items graciously, not just cash. So I pull up to the light, wave him over, and hand him the $4 I had. He thanks me and happens to walk across the intersection to the same gas station I'm heading to in the first place. I go in to get gas, he grabs some of the hot food and a cheap fountain drink. All good, right? Nope. In comes Karen. The typical look and everything. Big sunglasses, the haircut, yoga pants, all of it. She immediately storms over to the register and demands a manager. I'm only mildly paying attention because I just need gas. Manager comes forward and this woman points that ugly but orange-red long nail at me. I need police here. That woman gave that drug addict money outside your establishment, and a slew of other really random and ever-growing nonsense. At this point, the three other customers, me, the man I helped, and now a very interested customer, are staring at her. Manager looked so confused, so I chimed in. I said, regardless that it isn't her business, I gave the guy a few bucks across the street and he's buying food. Manager's like, okay, Karen isn't happy. She's screaming that obviously the station's a front for drugs and all sorts of crazy shiz. At this point, I've lost interest. Man buys his food, walks out. I get to the register, ask for gas. Is Karen done? No. She demands that if I'm going to pay for his drugs, then I need to buy her gas. She tells the cashier and manager to put, I think, like 40 or whatever on pump she was at on my dime and storms out. We all just blink. I chuckled a bit and told them how much gas I needed. I was going to just ignore it, but I'm petty. I said, put $1 on her pump. Her screaming when the pump stopped at $1 was beautiful. I got my gas and left while she was storming back into the station. Best dollar I ever wasted. And glad she didn't actually harass the poor guy just trying to eat. And our last story. Husband tries to warn neighbors about their landscaping, gets told to mind his own business. Some background. My husband's pretty handy. Prior to COVID, he'd done several flip houses as a fun side gig. It's what he loves to do, and he became very familiar with a ton of city codes. During COVID, it seems everyone was suddenly buying houses to flip out of boredom and prices skyrocketed, so he put that on hold. So then he started doing household repairs and upgrades, building fences, etc. around the neighborhood as well. To get a better understanding of the neighborhood HOA bylaws and whatnot, he joined the HOA Architectural Committee. Through that, he learned all there was to know about what was allowed and what was not, how the process worked, how to work around things, etc. Long story short, my husband was very knowledgeable in what to do and not to do, and various processes with the neighborhood and the city. Our next-door neighbor decided they were going to start landscaping their backyard, and they, I guess, planned to make theirs as similar to our backyard as possible. Problem was, despite being next-door neighbors, our land was quite different. For one thing, behind our house was a bunch of brush and pine trees maybe 3 to 4 feet from the lake that's at the back of the house. We didn't have to do a whole lot to clear the area, but the brush on their property was about a third of their yard. I'd say 10 feet from the water. Also, the way the houses on our street are, the land naturally made like a valley, where the house to our right is at the top, we're in the middle, and the next two houses are at the bottom before it very quickly rises again. First thing the neighbors did was cut down all the trees in their backyard. They were not small trees either, but 4-story tall trees or more. Husband and neighbor were talking about the backyard plans when my husband casually mentioned he was surprised the city gave him permission to cut down so many trees. In our city, you had to have an arborist give permission to cut down any trees that were X feet tall. Neighbor first said it wasn't the city's business what he did with his backyard, then told my husband to mind his own business. Okay, fair enough. Then they started putting up the retaining wall to bring it up to level with our property, which would have been about 7 to 8 feet tall. Basically, they were just stacking a bunch of cinder blocks. My husband uneasily asked if their landscapers had ever done a retaining wall like that and if the city approved it. City says that if a retaining wall is over 5 feet tall, you need a structural engineer to come out. Neighbor said again it wasn't any of the city's business what he did to his yard, and for my husband to mind his own business. While they're filling up the backyard to bring theirs level to ours, the landscapers are dumping all the dirt, gravel, and sand in the street, blocking a little over half the road. Several of the neighbors who had trucks would just hop the curb, but other neighbors with smaller cars were mad. Before my husband could ask if they could put the dirt and stuff in their driveway instead of the road, like everyone else, neighbor went off on my husband to F right off. Well, okay then. My husband let them continue working and didn't say a word as they started constructing a 10-foot tall fence, which was against HOA regulations. Fences couldn't be taller than 6 feet. Between them starting construction 6 days a week before 7 a.m. and them blocking the road, I guess someone had had enough. Next thing I know, city officials are out there putting a big old sign in the yard saying all construction was to be halted until further notice. It wasn't us, but my husband found out through the architectural committee that someone had complained about the noise and the road blockage to the HOA, who came out to investigate, saw everything they had done, and then reported them to the city. They got a hefty fine for every tree stump the city official found. The structural engineer said their retaining wall was not sound and had to be redone, and it had to have regular inspections during its build. The HOA also told them that not only did they have to take down their 10-foot tall fence, but as they didn't get prior approval and because it was not an approved design, the HOA also hit them with a hefty fine. Initially, neighbor came after us for tattling, but we told them it wasn't us, as nothing they did affected us in any way. Our kids are early risers, so even starting before 7 didn't bother us. My neighbor then said he tried to warn them this would happen, but neighbor told him to F off and mind his own business, and he did. Landscaping had started on Black Friday, was shut down for 3 weeks while I guess they got things sorted out with the city and HOA. Their backyard's still not finished. Edit. I truly want to say it wasn't us that called the HOA or city. We just let him be. But he pissed off a lot of neighbors. When cutting those trees down, he had chainsaws and the wood chippers going by 6:45, and the Bobcat being used by 7 a.m. 6 days a week. Other neighbors tried to ask him to put his dirt on his driveway instead of the street. He told them off to mind their own business too. And a few people went ballistic on him when their car slid a bit after the rains we had turned the remaining dirt to mud. The school bus could also easily have complained to someone about it too, as it was a big ordeal for them. Also, there were other things he did to his front yard that we didn't warn him about either, and he got dinged for. But I made this post mostly about him trying to go against the city, although the changes he made to the driveway also got dinged by the city. And yes, from what I heard, the tree fines were painful. Edit 2. No, really, it wasn't us. Although, not gonna lie, we almost ratted them out when they took out the beautiful oak tree in their front yard, put up a 20-foot flagpole, and put up a Chicago Bears flag. My husband can't stand that team. But we still kept quiet, and that flagpole was taken down about a week later. It could have been the HOA or city noticing on their own, or a neighbor reporting them because the clanging it made all day and night was awful. Sometimes people get what they deserve. A smart person will learn from this and stop behaving like such a craphead. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.